Paul's curiosity intensified. He felt drawn to the darkness that surrounded the Count's legend. He wanted to see the castle, to confront the stories head-on. As the villagers shared their tales, Paul listened intently. They spoke of the castle perched high on a craggy hill, looming over the valley like a malevolent guardian. Some claimed it was a place of unspeakable horrors, where the walls echoed with the cries of the damned. Others spoke of a beauty that could ensnare a man's soul, a seductive presence that compelled the unwary to venture too close. Dracula is said to have the power to control the minds of those who wander too near, an old woman warned, her voice shaking with age and fear. He can make you see what you desire most, only to take your life in the end. As the villagers recounted their chilling encounters, Anna began to feel a sense of dread. "Do you really think we should go to the castle?" she asked Paul, her voice laced with concern. "What if the stories are true?" Paul, however, was undeterred. "We can't let fear dictate our choices," he replied, his eyes alight with determination. "We came here to explore the unknown. The castle is part of that adventure." Michael rolled his eyes, but he couldn't help but admire Paul's bravery. "You're foolish, Paul," he said, though a hint of admiration seeped through. "But if you're going, I suppose I'll tag along. Someone has to keep you out of trouble." As the fire crackled and the night deepened, the tension in the inn grew heavier. The villagers gradually retreated to their rooms, leaving Paul, Michael, and Anna alone at the table. They shared stories of their own lives, but the shadow of Dracula loomed large in their conversation. Hours later, when the inn fell silent, Paul couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced out the window, seeing only the swirling mist and the distant outline of the castle. It beckoned to him, a siren call that resonated deep within his soul. "Let's do it," he said suddenly, his voice firm. "Tomorrow, we'll find our way to the castle. Whatever happens, we face it together." Anna hesitated, but she could see the fervor in Paul's eyes. "If we're going to do this, we need to be prepared," she said, determination setting in. "We should gather supplies and learn more about the Count." As dawn approached, the trio planned their expedition, their excitement mingling with a growing sense of foreboding. Little did they know that the path they chose would lead them into a nightmare from which not all would escape. With the first light of day, they set out toward the castle, unaware of the true horrors that awaited them and the dark fate that loomed over their heads. Each step forward pulled them deeper into the heart of Dracula's realm, where the line between myth and reality began to blur. As they journeyed through the misty hills, the village behind them faded into memory, leaving only the chilling stories echoing in their minds. The castle stood like a dark sentinel, waiting to reveal its secrets that would soon scar their lives forever. As dawn broke over the misty hills, Paul, Michael, and Anna found themselves drawn deeper into the heart of Transylvania. The villagers had warned them, but their curiosity outweighed their fear. With every step toward the castle, the weight of legend hung heavily in the air, a palpable tension that tingled along their skin. The trio wandered through the village, intent on gathering more stories about Count Dracula. They stopped by a small marketplace, where villagers hawked their wares, fruits, trinkets, and handmade crafts. Yet, the people's eyes held a haunted look, as if shadows lingered just out of sight. Paul approached an elderly man sitting by a fountain, his face lined with the marks of a long life. "Excuse me, sir, can you tell us about Count Dracula?" The old man's expression darkened, and he looked around as if to ensure no one else could hear. "Ah, the Count," he murmured, his voice a raspy whisper. "He is not just a tale, he is a nightmare that lives on." With the sun rising higher, the villagers gathered around, eager to share their stories, their voices tinged with fear and reverence. They recounted the history of Dracula, a name synonymous with horror, a figure cloaked in dark mystery. Dracula was once a man, a prince, began one villager, his eyes wide with the weight of memory. But after he lost his family to betrayal, he turned to dark magic to gain power. They say he sought immortality, but what he found was a curse. Another villager chimed in, her voice trembling. He drinks the blood of the living, drawing strength from their fear. It is said he can transform into a bat or a wolf, commanding the creatures of the night. He seduces the innocent, only to leave them as lifeless husks. Paul listened, his heart racing. The more he heard, the more his fascination grew. But why does he stay here? Why doesn't he leave this village? He pressed. The castle is his prison and his sanctuary, said an older woman, her face pale. He is bound to it by a curse of his own making. Though he is powerful, he cannot wander too far from his domain. Michael crossed his arms, skepticism etched on his face. Surely, these are just stories to frighten children. People love a good ghost story. But Anna shook her head, her expression serious. What if there's truth in these tales? What if he really does have power? As the villagers continued, they shared more chilling accounts of encounters with Dracula. Some spoke of friends and family members who had disappeared, last seen heading toward the castle. Others recounted dreams of a figure lurking in the shadows, whispering promises of eternal life, only to wake up drained and terrified. Once, a group of hunters sought to rid the land of his presence, a burly man recounted, his voice low and filled with dread. They entered the castle, armed with silver and holy symbols. They never returned. It is said their screams echo in the night, warning us not to follow. The tension in the air was thick, and Paul's determination only deepened. We have to go, he insisted. If we don't confront this, we'll always wonder what lies in the castle. The villagers exchanged glances, their fear evident. You don't understand, an older man said. Dracula is more than just a monster. He preys on the hopes and fears of the living. He will manipulate you, draw you in until you're trapped. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the village, the atmosphere shifted. The villagers' stories painted vivid images of the Count, a master of deception and darkness. Paul felt an almost magnetic pull toward the castle, despite the warnings echoing in his mind. Tonight, we must prepare, he declared. We'll gather supplies and study the tales further. We can't let fear control us. Anna nodded, though her eyes held a flicker of doubt. I just want to make sure we're ready for whatever we may encounter. We need garlic, holy water, anything that can protect us. Michael remained skeptical but agreed to join them in their preparations. They spent the day gathering supplies, visiting shops where the villagers reluctantly sold them herbs, talismans, and other protective items. That evening, as they sat in their inn, the atmosphere grew heavier. The tales of Dracula spun around them like a web, each thread weaving together a picture of a being who was as alluring as he was terrifying. Paul was captivated by the possibility of encountering such a creature, yet part of him felt the creeping chill of fear. Why are we so drawn to this? Anna asked, breaking the silence. What is it about Dracula that fascinates us so? Paul leaned back in his chair, contemplating her question. Maybe it's the idea of confronting our fears. The legend of Dracula represents the unknown, the darkness that exists in all of us. It's tempting to think we can face it and emerge victorious. But what if we don't? Michael interjected, his voice steady. What if we're not prepared for what lies ahead? As they debated, the shadows in the room seemed to lengthen, as if the very walls were listening. Outside, the wind howled, creating an eerie melody that resonated with the tales they had heard. The castle loomed in the distance, dark and foreboding, a silhouette against the moonlit sky. Finally, they resolved to confront their fears. They would head to the castle at dawn, equipped with their newfound knowledge and supplies. As they prepared to sleep, Paul couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were about to change forever. The legend of Dracula was not just a story, it was a challenge, a call to adventure that he could not resist. In the stillness of the night, as the village settled into a fearful slumber, the trio drifted off, their dreams haunted by the shadow of the Count. They saw flashes of red eyes, heard whispers that promised power, and felt the chill of his presence creeping closer. As dawn broke, they gathered their supplies, ready to embark on their journey. The village, once filled with vibrant life, now seemed cloaked in a somber silence. Each step they took toward the castle was laden with the weight of expectation and dread, the villagers' stories echoing in their minds. With determination in their hearts, they set off, their path illuminated by the rising sun. Little did they know that the castle held secrets darker than any of them could imagine, and that the legend of Dracula was only the beginning of their nightmare.